Welcome, Hollywood progressive friends. We're back again, this time with Ina Sahakyan, the director, producer, and writer of a glorious film that we saw this past week called Aurora Sunrise. It's an animated documentary that follows the life of an Armenian genocide survivor who goes through all kinds of death marches, sold into sexual slavery, but eventually makes it to New York and becomes an actress and an advocate for the Armenian cause. Welcome, Ina. How are you doing?
Thank you, Dick and Sharon. It's a big honor. Thank you. I am very good. Just returned from New York, where we had opening of our theatrical release. And yeah, it was fantastic. I'm really happy to say that New York, where we were opening at Village East by Angelica Theater and New Plaza Cinema. And I am happy to say that initially it was planned for a week, but today we heard that they are extending it for a second week. So it's...
So this is obviously, I mean, from our view, an artistic triumph, but it's also probably the most compelling telling of the story of the Armenian genocide in a way that lots of people, I mean, I've read lots of articles about it in long articles, but this moved me in a way that I hadn't been moved before. So basically, what's the story of Aurora Mardiganian? What's her story?
Her story, thanks for mentioning it. Her story is very different than many other Armenian genocide stories, and that's why I was so moved when I first became familiar with details of her story, and it kind of became my mission to retell it to the world. Being Armenian, as you know, we all have ancestors survived genocide. We grow up with genocide stories, and it's kind of everyone's pain, and it's my own pain. It's very, very close to me, and I always was afraid to touch this topic because we are becoming very sentimental, very sensitive. It's very hard to distance you from the subject, and also for me, I as a documentary filmmaker, I of course did not have a documentary character because most of survivors already passed. But when I discovered her testimonies at Zorian Institute Archive, we were working together with Zorian Institute on another project, and they suggested me to look over the testimony interview recorded with Aurora in 1984. Like, her story blew me up because, as you mentioned, this is not just a story of a girl who survived by luck or by destiny. It's a story of a girl who was making decisions, who was never giving up, who was never obeying her humanity, while everything around was so inhuman. And the most important and interesting for me that it's a story of a girl who did not agree to silence her voice, even when she was already in a safe land. So most of genocide survivors, not only Armenian, like most of war survivors, are trying to start new life and leave this heavy past behind, because it's very hard to start something new when you carry all that on your shoulders. Aurora not only carried that, but also start to speak about it. First so when she reached to New York in 1917, at the age of 16, she first started to speak about it in the newspaper articles. It was 14-piece newspaper series based on her life. And then it turned into a book, which became bestseller book back then in US. And then she agreed to relieve her pain in a silent fiction movie where they invited her to act her own life, to act as herself based on her book. So she basically agreed to relieve her pain again and again, with having one big mission to help her nation and to tell the world what is happening with Armenians, and at the same time to support charity, because the revenues of the film were going to support Armenian orphans and to build orphanages all around the world. So her story is very unique, and basically one of the first female activist stories, one of the first Hollywood star stories, which we all forget, right? So that's why I decided to tell this in my.
Did you have comments?
Yes, I did. Well, thank you, Ina. Thank you so much for bringing this story to contemporary audiences. We're talking about a tragedy, the 1915 genocide of the Armenian people under the Ottoman Empire. And that Ottoman Empire no longer exists. So what the region of the world that we're talking about is areas of Iraq, Iran, Turkey, little portions of Syria. All of this was the Ottoman Empire. And I had a map where I was looking at the wide expanse of the concentration camps, because there were concentration camps. And there was a march, which is what she experienced, this march to the Syrian desert. And I think because your film is animated, it's very special in that this is a horrendous story. It's horrendous. In some ways, it's easier to watch it because it's the animation that somewhat helps to remove the horrors. But at the same time, you understand these horrors. And it's so important that these stories be told, because throughout human history, there have been other genocides. And one of the points that Aurora Mardiganian, one of the points that she makes is that if the world had known about the Armenian genocide, then maybe there would not have been so soon after another genocide with the Holocaust, the Jews and the Nazis. But even as a result of that, of the Armenian genocide, you now have a huge Armenian diaspora that I'm sure that the United States has been one of the places that many Armenians, members of the Armenian diaspora, live here. So have you heard from young Armenians and what this film, I know it hasn't had its major release yet, but what this film has meant to them in terms of their education?
Thank you for a very beautiful introduction of the situation and for your great comments about the film. That's true. I choose animation specifically together with our great team because we had the task to speak about horrific events, but in a way that it will speak to the people. It will touch people because people's hearts. Because if you think like in the first 20 minutes when the war started and Armenian genocide is already in action, like everyone in Aurora's family was murdered. And if we go to the direct storytelling, to the fiction film, or like directly talking about what was happening, it will be very heavy to watch. And we had the task to find the medium that will speak to the wide audience, but at the same time will be artistic, but will be able through symbols and colors and kind of creating the dream world and giving the pain, transferring the pain, how painful it was to lose this dream world. Animation was the amazing medium, but it's very good medium also to speak with younger audience, as you mentioned, Armenian and non-Armenian also, because young audience now, we all know, right? They used to fast mediums, they used to TikTok, I don't know, short videos, and it's very hard to catch their attention. But I'm very I think my mission and our team's mission kind of reach to the point, because we do have a lot of young audience coming to the cinemas, coming to the festival, Armenian and non-Armenian, and they see it through all the film. And I received many messages, and on Letterboxd, for example, many young people sharing that the non-Armenian audience, that they first time heard about Armenian genocide, but they follow Aurora's story, and through personal story of this one young girl, they learned bigger picture and young Armenian audience, mainly they know about genocide because it's kind of our national legacy. We always, I mean, I have young teenage kids, and they of course know about genocide. Any Armenian families talks about genocide. We keep our nation and our family history very active because sadly, this pain is not healed. And that's one of the important messages important points in all this strategy that is not letting us to really not forget about, but to leave it in the past, kind of to move on. Yes, Armenian nation is moving on. Armenian youth is doing very different stuff. They are very active in different fields. They are finding themselves, but they still carry this unhealed pain, and they still have this responsibility to tell it to the world and pass it to the next generation until Turkey, which is basically state who born after the Ottoman Empire, will take this responsibility to acknowledge the act of mass killing of Armenians as genocide. As you correctly mentioned, Aurora at the end of the film says herself, it's not only that the world will know, the world knew what was happening, that the world will acknowledge this as a crime, as mass crime, that the Turkey will take this responsibility, then we can move on. And then maybe the world will become a bit better place where there will not be one more historical injustice. And very heavy for me, and I think for all of us, that sadly 100 years ago, Aurora's story happened 100 years ago, but sadly today world did not change. What is happening in Ukraine is new genocide. Syria, it's crazy because Nadim Murad's story is basically current day's Aurora's story, like very, very similar, and the world did not become better place, and which is the most heavy for me, myself, being Armenian, that Armenia's situation is not changed. And even 100 years after, we are still in the same geopolitical game. We are still small country pawns in between big countries, political decisions. And even today in Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, small Armenian land, which is occupied by Azerbaijan, it's blockaded by Azerbaijan from December. It's becoming worse and worse. And for last month, there is not even small piece of humanitarian support crossing this border, and 120,000 Armenians, 30,000 kids are in direct genocide right today. And today it was already recorded first deaths from the hunger among Armenians. So so sorry for being very emotional, but it's very, very heavy when you're making film about historical injustice, but injustice is still happening right now in your own homeland.
Yes, I understand. I absolutely understand that.
So I mean, part of the reason Turkey won't acknowledge and own up to what their forefathers did is that Western countries, including the United States, don't put the pressure on them because Turkey's part of NATO, so they don't want to offend them. But so I do assume that even young Armenian Americans and Armenians, such as your children, are aware of this story. But I would say that this story, the way you did this film, is a great entree to the non-Armenian young people and old people who blow by this story, who don't know it. I mean, it's such a the animation and the integration of some video interviews is such a compelling way to tell the story. I mean, just as entertainment, it's wonderful, and then it has this powerful message. So you're trying to get it into theaters. How else are you going to use this as a tool to wake people up to the Armenian genocide and the current state in Armenia?
Thank you, Dick. The film is first premiered in Annecy in 2022, June, in competition, Annecy's biggest animation film festival. And despite it was a year ago, we are still in the festivals, which is very makes me very happy, because every week, month, we are in different country with the festival tour. Which is really great. So festivals are still ongoing. Of course, we will have the film on different countries' televisions, and I'm happy to mention that from October 23, the film will be on PBS POV series for the US audience. And afterwards, we are still trying to understand how the film life will go, but definitely we will have VOD, SVOD, TVOD platform opportunities for the audiences. But telling this, I also want to encourage audience to go and watch it in cinemas, because animation is really, and all these different mediums, when animations, as you mentioned, the film is told in different mediums. So we use animation, we use pieces of silent movie, Auction of Souls, which did not survive, sadly, but we have about 20 minutes of her epic silent movie, and we use that part in our film, and her testimonies. So all these, how these three mediums change one to another, and the beauty of animation is very different on the big screen. And also sound is very important when you see it, big cinema, and you have all this sound, 5.1 sound. It's a very different experience.
So you gave us a window into her life for a somewhat of a short period of time, but also we got to see actual real footage of Aurora being interviewed when she was in her late 70s, maybe 80s.
70s, 80s.
So do you know what happened in her life from the time that she was 17 until her 70s? I mean, that's a long span. She made this one film. Did she make any others?
Yes, thank you for the question. The film is capturing 5 years, from 1915 till 1920. And that's for me the most important 5 years, when she survived and she acted as an activist against inhumanity. And the film, okay, I will not spoil how the film is ending. She never considered herself actress, even though she was so famous. If you search in New York and US media, now everything is digitalized and it's easy to search through Library of Congress archive. Her name was in every newspaper, so many articles about her. She was so famous. She was one of the top names back then in 1919, 1920s. But for her, the mission was just to retell her nation's story and not to become an actress. The rest of her life, she lived modest, but very devoted Christian American Armenian woman. While she was in New York, till 1975-ish. She was very active because she had a lot of friends, and she was very active in society. She was Red Cross, working with Red Cross, doing still humanitarian work. She was married. She has a child. But after her husband's death, they moved to LA, and sadly in LA, she was not able to find herself, and she was already old, over 75. And she kind of locked herself in her own apartment. And you may notice it in one of the interviews. So
that's kind of where I was headed, because what she witnessed, no human being should witness. And the story is somewhat victorious, but it touches a little bit on what I would call PTSD.
Absolutely.
You cannot experience that and not come out emotionally and psychologically damaged.
Of course. And for her, it was ongoing. she basically she put herself in this PTSD, like for her, the touring with the film silent movie, which was so successful. The box office of silent movie was about 100 million back then, which is billions on today's amount. And it was important for her to go with the film and to talk with people, but it was reliving trauma again and again, seeing that on the screen, answering on the questions about her family, about her losses. So it was very, very heavy for her, of course. But she, and only at the end of the life, she basically kind of accepted this as like kind of, I don't want to say that she stepped back, but most likely it was all too much for her, and she locked herself and was staying at home. But before that, one important thing which I really like in her story, and it's not in my film, after learning that she was also used by her producers, that's a part of the Hollywood story. She was strong enough that in US in 1920 she started a court case against her guardians, and she won it. And back then it was $5,000, and that helped her to bring her sister and help more orphanages and put that money also in charity, which is like really amazing. So she was really like woman who was fighting for human rights, for her own rights, who was giving voice to other women of a time, and that like really, really amazing character. I think we all have learned have a lot to learn from her.
Right. I think that her strength, a lot of her strength may be a testament to the strength of her family. You see what a tight-knit family she had the mom and the dad, and they enjoyed listening to the children perform, and the mom performed with them. They had clearly a very close-knit family, and she clearly had a father and a mother who adored her. And I think that that's where some of the inner strength probably came from.
Absolutely. We our roots are in our homeland and in our families, and she had very strong roots.
So this was obviously a labor of love. You started it in 2014 and it took you almost 7 years to complete. And now you're in the process of getting it around to theaters and publicizing it. So I wonder, what's your next project, or what else are you working on?
Yeah, every project for small independent studio from Armenia is a nightmare, honestly, because I mean everything is hard, when you compete with the big world. Right now, when we were in New York in cinema with Aurora, next door was Barbie playing, and two women stories. But of course, I mean it's very, very hard to start and finish something when you are independent small studio. So that's why it takes 7+ years for Aurora, because that's not only production process, which was also very hard, because 60+ minute animation is really, really hard to produce. But that was also hardship with financing and putting together all the pieces of puzzle. So while animation is wonderful, and while it will stay with me forever, and I definitely will return to it, because it's a medium that gives really freedom to creative person's imagination. I needed a bit break from it because it's very heavy to produce anything in animation. And I was searching for light topic because 7 years on genocide topic was really, really heavy for me. But unbelievably, I found it in elderly house in Armenia, which is usually should not be the place for light topics, right? Elderly houses also are heavy places. But this one, which is in Yerevan in Armenia, it has really amazing residents who decided to become actors at the end of their life and staging Shakespeare. And I am following their lives together with co-director Lilith Movsisyan. We work together, and they are amazing personalities. And despite their old age and being lonely, they again don't give up, and they say we have nothing to lose, but we can earn so much from this life still. And this is an uplifting project about people who find their creativity, meaning of life in friendship and art.
Wonderful.
How cool.
Yeah.
So your film starts here in Los Angeles at the Laemmle Glendale on August 18th, and we strongly encourage people to come out and see it. We were blown away by it, and we were blown away by this discussion with you. So thanks so much, Ina.
Thank you, Ina. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'll also ask everyone to follow our website. It's aurorasunrise.com, because we are still continuing to play also in New York, and we'll have other cities. So everything is listed there. So we're having a nationwide theatrical release. So I thank you for this opportunity, and ask your audience also to follow us and go to watch film on the big screen. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank
Thank you.